Welcome back, everybody, to the ND and Free podcast and the ND and Free Wellbeing Show, the community-driven podcast where we explore neurodivergence, learning from our listeners, podcast partners, and ND and Free patrons. Myself, Owen Morgan, and my team of co-hosts dive into all things neurodivergence. We are a worldwide community of NDers who are on a mission to free ourselves from the shame we feel, from the burden of trying to fit in, and free from the burnout caused from not honouring our needs. Join us each week as we talk all things neurodivergence, including ADHD, autism, AuDHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and more. Together, we can move towards a world where we can thrive in a way that best serves our neurotype and supports our nervous system. We are ND and Free. All right, everyone, we are back with episode 2 of our Wellbeing Show, and we have a brand new panel that you're going to get to know for hopefully the rest of the year. We are sat down with my wonderful co-host and neurodivergent therapist and ADHD coach in training, Philippa Balazs, and Neurodivergent Assessor and speech and language therapist, Alice Cantwell. What a mouthful that was. Welcome to you both. I'm really excited for this journey, and most of our audience, about 80% of the audience is female. So it makes sense to have essentially a female panel that we can have questions for particularly. So Alice, welcome. You've been on multiple episodes now. So how are you feeling about this journey of making a change as a group?
I think good. I'm just excited to chat about everything ND. As you know, I could talk all day about it, but also if any of what we talk about or what we answer can help one person resonate or feel better, then I think it's going to be great.
Definitely. It only takes a person to hear that one thing that could change everything. How special is that moment? So Philippa, how about yourself? Because you've been on the show once, and we were due to have you back on for a one-to-one. I thought, no, she needs to be a co-host. She needs to be partly running the show as well. So how are you feeling about this today?
Yeah, I'm feeling so excited. I think it's such a brilliant initiative that we're doing, and just like reaching as many people as we can to let them know, you know what, you're not on your own with this. You know, there are people who get it. I think that's the kind of key thing.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I just think there's so much content out there, isn't there? There's so many podcasts and so many Instagram channels, and there's all the memes for ADHD. Then there's the more sort of deeper work that's happening on social media. And I feel like maybe I was just falling into the black hole is that. So let's just do something that feels really authentic and real and just something a little bit different. So what's going to happen here? You've got the 2 sets of panels. Everyone that's listening got 2 sets of panels, and this is your chance on many of these episodes to send in your questions, and we will go through those, and they're kind of like topic and discussion starters for us as well, which is great. So today is all about a topic that we've chosen to talk about, and in our next episode or a few episodes time, you'll get a Q&A. So we literally just answer questions. So look out for that in the podcast feed there. But normally I would ask you both for context, but I encourage everybody to go to the links below where they get to find out about all your work. And you are like, that's kind of the main go-tos for this whole movement. So go and check that out, everybody. They can find out more about your work. But it's incredible. I've got a therapist here, someone that's trained to be a coach, some does assessments and speech language. I think I've covered pretty much everything here. So I feel like the one with the least knowledge, but I have all the training as well in ADHD coaching. So let's dive in. We're going to be talking about burnout today. In our last episode, actually, if you haven't seen yet, guys, is I did a whole episode with Garrett Wood, who helps people go from burnout to breakthrough. So this is going to kind of follow on from that in other details as well. So go back to that episode. You can check that out as well. But we always like to start with a little bit of fun. So I need each of you, if it's possible, to share something you've learned about ND. Since I last saw you. It can be a personal reflection or something you've read or heard about. So just to set the tone, that's on the sort of top of your brain at the moment that you noticed since we last met. So Alice, is there anything that comes to mind? You're like, whoa, okay, didn't know that.
So something that I learned just yesterday, so it's fresh in the brain. Obviously, I refer to myself as AuDHD, autistic and ADHD. That is not a diagnostic label. I am autistic and ADHD. But I know that lots of the community call themselves AuDHD. I do too, and there's variations of how we spell that or say that. So I was at an event yesterday. I did a talk, but I listened to a talk by Karim Sadiq, and he's done lots of work around ADHD, and he was at the Royal College of Psychiatrists, and he was allowed as a speaker, and he's amazing in his field. He was allowed to refer to it as ADHD, and to be allowed to refer to it in such a big professional, quite medical environment is amazing. And as much as it's not a diagnostic label yet, I feel that I hope as well, and he did share that hope of that there is movements that maybe one day in the DSM-6-7, which is our diagnostic criteria, that maybe that will be recognised, because it's such, I personally really do feel so strongly about it. It's such a unique presentation because, and I can't claim the quote, he said it's like having two planets and living on neither, of just floating around in space around it. So yeah, I've learned that there are changes, there are discussions. It might be slow, but there is, which is great.
That's amazing, because you think, we know from in the social media world that it's just an amazing time for all of this. It's growing so fast, and everybody's starting to really honor the just the vastness of what is neurodivergence. So yeah, to hear about that in a more professional manner, I guess it's something that we're not hearing much about. And it's probably really important to know what we're being backed up by, who we're being backed up when it comes to diagnosis and how that looks. So that's cool. Thank you. I love that. That's amazing. So Philip, anything come up for you since I last saw you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Alice, as well, because that is definitely a step in the right direction. That feels really hopeful as well, which is great. I think, yeah, so it was September, wasn't it? I think we spoke when we last met. And I think I've been doing a bit of a deep dive into pathological demand avoidance, which I really hate that name, by the way. I think it's awful. But PDA, as it's referred to, or demand avoidance, or some people like to call it a pervasive drive for autonomy. That's also another way of referring to it, because it's come up in my life, in my sort of parenting world, but also for me in realizing that as you know, I was early diagnosed. So I was diagnosed in childhood, diagnosed oppositional defiance disorder, which now doesn't really get used very much. And realizing, hold on a minute, this PDA stuff looks like it applies to me big time. So yeah, just doing a deep dive around that stuff and what that looks like around the nervous system and the environment, and how when we modify our environment, we can actually make a lot of the kind of symptoms, so to speak, kind of go away. So yeah, just that relationship between neurodivergence and environment really has been, it's been fascinating for me. So I think that's what I've learned.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think PDA will definitely be covered in an episode in the future. There's like 10 key topics that everyone talks about, so we will cover those. But there will be some niche stuff on the way as well. But that's one of my biggest ones, I think. My partner will tell you that. Don't like to be told what to do. She'll tell me, and then 5 minutes later, I'll say I came up with an idea of that I could do this, and then she laughs. So
I love that, because I refer to myself as having a persistent drive for autonomy, and I think what you see as kind of on the surface, it can be really subtle, and obviously as a late diagnosed MAST, everything like that, of what it does to my whole body, it's nuts. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and people, I tell neurotypicals about it, and they just don't think that's a thing. They just think, who doesn't want autonomy? And I'm like, no, you don't get it. It literally, I can feel it in my body. It's like literally a physical, visceral thing, which wouldn't be technically normal, inverted commas, whatever that means. But speaking of which, let's dive into today's episode all about burnout. So, we're going to sort of cover how we can avoid it, help ourselves, how we can honor our needs. That's the goal, isn't it? Is knowing how to do those things, but also the holistic nature of what to do when it happens as well. It's twofold, isn't it? It's like, what do you need to come out the other side as well? So, guys, I think this is really, really prevalent in this community, and in a nutshell, if we're being honest, us having to go out into that neurotypical world, which isn't, they don't have to meet our needs, but it has to be, reasonable adjustments. The world isn't going to give us reasonable adjustments, really. So we're having to sort of decide how we're going to interact with the world, and quite often we can't keep up, and it does lead to too many burnouts and illnesses as well. It has an impact on your body and things that happen to us. So as far as what we feel burnout is and what it looks like, we come back to you, Alice. what does burnout look like to you? You know, in your own words, 'cause it can be seen slightly differently. What do you vision in yourself or another when you see that?
Burnout for me is just that continual trying to exist and trying to survive to a point where everything stops. The thinking, the friendships, the work, everything, it's impossible. And I think what you said with illness is so, it's so there. I was diagnosed chronic fatigue syndrome. And when I look at my whole life, it's that boom and bust. And it happens to people in different ways, in different intensities, at different lengths. It's so personal to you. One person's burnout may look completely different to someone else's burnout. And I think when people talk about burnout, because I think neurotypical, everybody kind of talks, oh, I'm so burnt out, which means like when you think of a match that's completely gone down, it is physically, literally burnt out, which we can all feel like that. Life is hard, being an adult is hard, being a parent, working. But add to that everything that a neurodivergent person is burnt out with, because we've got sensory stuff, social stuff, routines, rituals, attention processing, hyperactivity, impulsivity, everything that comes within that and more, on top of your normal kind of, I'm so burnt out from life. And I think it is truly just wiped out, like exhausted times a million, and really, really detrimental with lots of negative feelings, personally.
And for you, Philippa, how does it look? How does it feel?
I mean, ditto everything Alice said so eloquently. I think, yeah, for me, I think from a professional perspective as well, like it astonishes me how long people can live with burnout before kind of realizing what it is. And how adaptable people are, just finding ways of carrying on. And when people often get to the point where they seek out help or a therapist, they've been through many cycles of burnout and kind of, got to a point where like the things I was doing to get out of the burnout are no longer helping me. They're no longer working. So that's something that really stands out to me, is just how long and how adaptable human beings are, even in adversity. When we're really, really at rock bottom, a lot of people just keep on going and somehow find resources. And I think of it like if you have a bank account, right, and you keep spending money you haven't got, eventually you're going to go into the minus. So burnout is when you've lived beyond your capacity for so long that you're now in a kind of minus, and then everything stops. And it's not negotiable, it's just like everything stops. And I think that kind of neurotypical idea of burnout and being exhausted is different to neurodivergent burnout, because there is that kind of loss of function, loss of skills that you once had, that kind of absolute standstill of everything. And that has to be built back up again, So yeah, I think that's kind of how I see it. And I think for me, how I experience it as well is that there's always warning phases that I now am tuned into, which gives me time to rectify. All right, I've been doing too much of this for too long. I need to pull back on this here. It's constantly readjusting all the volume buttons on everything to prevent that from happening, because when it does, it's catastrophic.
Sorry to jump in, but I fully everything that, and I personally love the visual representation of the bank, of going into that minus and being as a debt. And when you pay back that debt, you get back to zero, but then it's like life still continues. So then you go back in, and how hard it is to get back up. And I don't know if it's a thing, but I personally feel like, especially, and there probably is links with being late diagnosed and high masking. I don't use the terms high functioning, low functioning anyway, but the only way I can describe it is high functioning burnout. And when you think about kind of, and I know it's completely different, but it's in my brain, high functioning alcoholics, that they might be able to have liters and liters of vodka, go in, still do their job, but they need that. And I feel like at certain times of my life, I feel like I've never got back to zero balance. It's always down. And I think that's what we have to do. Like you said, it's always changing, because you might feel like you get back to zero and then something else happens. And there's so many more dynamics and things that come into that as a neurodivergent person, let alone just a person trying to survive on Earth.
Who wants to live at zero? I mean, I want to live at plus whatever.
Exactly.
It's true. And I think capacity is the word that I use for myself. What's my capacity today? So when you realize that you just have zero capacity for anything and it goes on for days on end, that something is happening and you're not able to build up your energy reserve or your attention span or whatever it may be. But I think, to know what our capacity is requires some sort of self-awareness, self-reflection, self-compassion, intellectual knowledge too, I suppose, going and figuring out how to locate your capacity and how that will look and what you need to sense into your body. And I guess that's a nice little pivot here for us to think about how we can help ourselves going forward. But I just think when you deeply know what your limits are for certain sensory inputs, or how much interaction you need with other people, how much solitude you require, what that looks like. Once you figure out all those things, that's what I've done for the last year since diagnosis. It's an absolute game changer. Whereas before I knew I was neurodivergent, why would I even be thinking about capacity in links to neurodivergence? I wouldn't be doing that. I would be forcing and pushing, thinking I had anxiety or trauma, all the things I thought that I had. But this forcing and pushing and forcing and pushing is something I do a lot. I could really live in a slightly different life to the one I have, but we talking about environment. Philippa, you talking about environment earlier, and circumstance and financial situations and family. You kind of get stuck because you can't really make that many changes to your actual holistic way life looks. You have to do all these little micro things to protect yourself, and it's a little bit exhausting. So yeah, Alice, what you feel there is that this deep sense of knowing how your body and mind works is probably the best place to start before you can even try and implement things, really.
And I think that's it. And I think that even say if someone has gone through the diagnostic process and they have the understanding, and I think that sometimes, and it really depends on what kind of assessment you've had, what kind of support you've had before, after, your general knowledge about neurodivergence is, because some people, and I experience it, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm autistic or ADHD or dyspraxic, and I know what that means, or I know the definition. I have no idea what it means for me and how that looks of kind of, and that doesn't have the language then to work that out or to pick that apart. And sometimes, well, that's overwhelming in itself to actually dive into, of like what areas are. And I think it's a journey, and like I personally I go through that journey myself of only, and I think society, like why we push ourselves, and I definitely do, and I have done, I'm trying not to, and be like, I am me. What is my capacity to do? What do I want to achieve? What do I want to do to fulfill my life? Not what Claire down the road is doing, because she works 9 till 9 and she does this, this, and this. And I think society has led us, we work, we go to school, we might have families, we do this, we do that. Life is generally so fast paced, everything's online, everything's accessible, we need to do it now, which is fine for some people. And some people feed off that. Parts of my brain does feed off that, but parts of my brain don't. And I think it's that self-awareness, but that self-awareness of what do you genuinely want from life, what do you need. But you even said of like those micro things, that's exhausting. And it's like, well, am I going to get burnout from trying to manage my burnout? Because everything at burnout, all your levels of everything have dropped so low, to do anything feels impossible. So it is catching it before, which is easier said than done. And yeah, it's a minefield, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The warning phases are so important. I think that, especially as well, what you're saying kind of made me think about, shame, actually, because shame can be a reason that people don't tune into those warning signs, because there's so much shame around, I should be able to do this. I should be able to be like so and so down the road, you know, like the other mums at the school, I should be able to do all of these things. And that should is the thing that will actually kind of like blur the lines for you being able to see the warning signs and kind of keeping that cycle, which is why I always say, you know, it's so important to think about what shame are we carrying around this? Like what narratives are we carrying? And let's really unpick it, because if we don't, we will just end up back in that cycle and we can't get out of it until we've cracked that open.
And I think, and I love to share. I don't call it oversharing anymore, because who says it's oversharing? Anyway, when I was in one of my first jobs after graduating, I was in the NHS. I was a community therapist covering lots of different schools. I would go to a different school, but then I'd allow enough time between the schools that I would then get into my tiny little 3-door red KA, climb into the back, set a 10 or 15-minute timer to fall asleep, and then go back and do the next one. If I was in the office, in the clinic, I would go into the clinic room, lock the door, lie on the floor for my half-an-hour lunch break and sleep, and set a timer. And then on the way back on the motorway, I'd be kind of on my turning of the motorway. I could feel myself, you know, when you're kind of too tired to drive. But I just kept going because everyone else is managing to do this, and I should be able to do this. I'm a qualified speech and language therapist. I enjoy it. And it's only when I went through my own diagnostic process and my mum read my referral, she's like, I had no idea. She's like, Alice, that is not normal. And I put it down to my chronic fatigue at the time. I was like, I'm just chronically tired. But we shouldn't live that tired. And I think I felt so embarrassed, and that shame and that guilt. That's why I didn't tell anyone that I have to sleep in work to manage that. Like I said, well, I'll probably get fired. So I think that all those emotions that come into it, and I think it is that should, but who said you should? And lots of it is societal, so no one's directly told you that. For me as well, a lot of that is internal, fed in by society. If I should be able to do this, I should be productive, I should be able to manage a 9 to 5. I can't, and that is fine, and that's why I don't do it anymore. But it's hard to get to that point without the knowledge, support, understanding, if you're as well in burnout.
Yeah, I think I'm laughing because it's exactly what I do now, Alice, what you're talking about there. And it gets to a point like, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about what I'm having to do to essentially reset. So I don't see it as in top myself up or get my energy back. It just, to me, I don't like the language for me inside myself that I'm having to do that. It's more resetting. So my brain body just needs a quick little cheeky reset so I can get back into the next activity. So, Alice, like you said, it's understanding that if I spend a couple of hours with my family and it's amazing and gorgeous and everything, of course it is, but I need so much solitude. I need so much quiet and not hearing people talking and eating. For me and Philippa know all about misophonia here, just human noises. After a while, I get really overstimulated, and then I start being weird, making weird voices and singing about what I'm doing. And then I know I'm starting to unravel. So what I do is I get changed about an hour before work. So I work on a night shift, and then I will drive we have a gorgeous park in Bath. And it's pitch black at the moment, obviously there are a few street lights. So I'll lock the doors from the inside, get my pillow out and my squishy. I'm going to be open and honest. On my squish, the squishmallows. So I've got an immense squishmallow. The texture of it is incredible. And like you said, I'll just put my head back and I will fall asleep every single time. It'll take me a few minutes, and then I'll wake up with a slight snore when the alarm goes off, and it's been 22 minutes. I feel incredible. I just feel light. Just for a moment, I just feel light. It's fascinating. It happens every time. Then I go into work, I'm feeling light and not overstimulated, and I'm ready to go into a busy supermarket with lots of noise and all that kind of stuff. It's incredible. It works. It just requires me to leave a little bit earlier and put that in place as something that's completely normal for me to do and can really transform my life in the long term. And it's just owning that, isn't it? And you just find our way.
Massive, and putting those into place before it comes out of, I work from home, so I don't have a commute where I could have no radio, switch off, and then I'd go straight back into toddler life. So now I sit for 10 to 15 minutes in quiet, or and put those moments in. And often it's a couple of minutes. It's not like and afterwards of big things, I have to pre-plan in downtime like you do of your work schedule. That's just part of your daily routine to make it work, just as much as it's part of your daily routine to brush your teeth or take some tablets or put your shoes on. And I think it's putting those in place before we get there and being that proactive, because everything in the world is very reactive and kind of it's too late then. Obviously, we can do things to support and help, but surely we're better off spending our time preventing this and putting things in. I mean, it's going to help everybody, neurotypical, neurodivergent or not, but really, really key for neurodivergent people as much as it is to, I mean, brushing teeth can be hard as a neurodivergent person, I will know that, but putting those things in place and letting yourself, giving yourself permission to do that and to want that and the boundaries that come with that. And that is a journey to navigate, but I think those are the bits that are key.
Yeah. I know like the ADHD part of me sometimes is like, I'm not doing enough and it needs to be bigger and it needs to be louder. And, you know, even if it's just like looking at micro things for burnout, it's like it needs to be some radical overhaul. Like I need to totally change my life and then everything will be fixed. And actually, you know, what you're saying about these tiny micro things is, you know, that is cumulative. If we take 2 minutes there and 2 minutes there and 2 minutes there over the day, over the week, that accumulates. And if we think about that kind of exchange system of the bank account, we're putting pennies in. We're not putting pounds in. We're just putting pennies in to bring it back up to that point where we're not, you know, we're not at absolute like I can't function anymore. And they use it in like top athletes use this principle. It's like marginal gains. Well, they'll make a tiny adjustment to their seat on their bike. You know, they'll swap one seat with another seat, and all of a sudden their performance improves. And there's like science behind this that if we just make these tiny tweaks, all these tiny little things over the period, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks, a month, 2 months, it could be a 10% improvement. But I know for me that I'm like, if I can't see it immediately, I don't get that immediate gratification, it's not good enough and I won't do it. So it's just remembering that, yeah, just tiny micro things do all add up.
That is micro. I've recently re-downloaded the Calm app. And on there is quick quick meditations. And because the other day I went straight from work, went straight into toddler, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get out and sit in the car by myself. I did yesterday after work, I did a 2-minute meditation, and the difference it made was incredible. And I have been diving into that and some tiny little practices, because for me, the ADHD side of me, I really struggle to stick to things and to do things. I need quick, realistic, easy. The more steps there is, the more we're not going to do them. So kind of habit stacking them of when I go down to make breakfast, I'll listen to a little masterclass about that, or I will sit and have my coffee and do the meditation. And I think those teeny tiny little things make such a difference. And I've noticed it. I've been kind of listening to some owning kind of and parenting side of it's not just for neurodivergent people, but because obviously being a parent adds to that burnout as well. But these tiny little things, like I haven't done anything big, like I haven't done any long things, but the difference it's made in how I am and how regulated I am with my son, who's a toddler, so a lot, it's made such a big difference. And even that is helping me. I feel like I'm constantly preventing burnout, like I'm constantly thinking of that. And even little things like that of my regulation, because that in itself is exhausted when you're dysregulated. So even things that aren't necessarily directly related to burnout, all the things that are hard in your life, that dysregulation that brings, the exhaustion that comes with that. So even those things are helping me feel more regulated. So I am preventing that burnout. And the tiny, like these short little things that are really bite-sized and accessible have made massive differences. And I've only been doing it since Monday, and we're Friday. So it's great. And even I am the same, it's like that reward, but I am seeing tiny little things. It's not going to be completely different. I'm not going to be a completely different person, but noticing those tiny patterns helps as well.
Yeah. It's that investment, and you're, but ultimately what you're doing, what you're trying to do is telling your nervous system to stand down all the time, just reminding it it's okay. Stand down. I've got that, and that's kind of those tiny little things that we're talking about is just reminding, okay, okay, all the time.
Yeah. And I feel
Yeah.
like as a neurodivergent person, our nervous system, and that is an area that I'm kind of getting into and want to know everything about, but it's on high alert. And I feel like my whole life, that nervous system is like, screaming. And it's now of kind of, right. And you can feel it, but like, oh, just even a tiny fraction and how that massively helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so key, the sort of hypervigilant that you said, and being on alert. It's a big part. Our nervous system, it's a big part of that ND. There's a lot of talk about what the brain's doing, neurodivergence, but and the body and the way nervous system regulates itself and all these autonomic systems sort of running wild. And we do have to be engaged in part of helping those regulate. So that in itself is exhausting, isn't it? And I think when we put ourselves in environments or situations or life circumstances that affect that, we're kind of setting ourselves up a little bit to have to fight even more. And it does lend nicely into this sense of, we've talked here about how we can take care of ourselves in every single moment, but also how you can prepare and prep for certain environments and what you're about to go into. So school runs is a big thing for all neurodivergent parents. We all have our own stories and how that looks. Sometimes it's fine, other times it's not. But it's honoring your needs, honoring what you require as you move into those spaces. So, for example, I really don't enjoy doing the school run, and I hate queuing. I can't explain it. I hate being in a queue, someone in front of me, someone behind me, the noise, the chatting. I don't want to listen. I don't want to eavesdrop. They're talking so loud. It's all too much. So I don't queue. I stand over on the other side of the road, and they're all queuing up, and then I have to let go of, they must think I'm rude, or why is he trying to jump the queue, or wherever it may be. So let the queue sort of go in, then I take my chance to then go. I go down through the gates, pick up my stepson, and get the hell out of there as quickly as I can, with all the people around me walking out as well. But it works. I've built it up over time. I tried loads of different techniques. I've got this sweet, perfect spot in the playground there by the tree. Nobody stands there. It's perfection. So I've honored my needs. People probably think I'm rude and miserable, not talking to anybody. I don't have capacity, I'm afraid. I'm leaving this energy for my family. This energy is going to be used when I get back and when I go to work. That's just the way it goes. And they can think what they like, really. As they say, it's none of my business what people think about me. Try and tell that to my RSD, but that's what I have to do. So yeah, Philippa, what do you think there about once you really start to cultivate self-awareness? It's like, no, I'm going to advocate for myself, and I know I'm worthy of making these adjustments for myself, and I love myself for that. It's quite important.
Yeah, I think it's really important to kind of be aware of that. We don't necessarily get rid of those voices that we've had for years, right? We might have had these very kind of critical voices, and people want to get rid of them. I want to get rid of mine, but it's there. I have to work around it. It's a bit like a roadblock. I have to kind of carve out a path around it and create new thoughts and new narratives around it. So I might hear that, oh my God, I'm so rude. Like, they must think I'm so rude. I still have that. But then I have a new thought that comes in and goes, you know what? They probably don't even think anything. They probably don't even know you're there. So I wouldn't worry about it. So it's kind of constantly balancing those voices, and which one am I going to tune into? Which one am I going to focus my attention on? Am I going to think about the one that's going to make me feel bad, it's going to dysregulate me and drain me? Or do I want to tune into the one that's going to make me feel like, you know what, this probably isn't a big deal to anybody and it's not that deep, and then I can forget about it when I get home? So yeah, I think it's just being mindful that we'll always have these thoughts. They're probably programmed into most of us from years of God knows what experiences we've had. But just knowing that it will come and that it doesn't have to take over can be so powerful. Just going, yeah, that's that thought again. Hello, bye-bye, off you go. It doesn't have to take over. It's that ACT principle, isn't it? Of just mindfully noticing those thoughts and just kind of greeting them and then saying goodbye to them, and yeah, letting them come and go. They do not have to define our behavior.
And I think it fits in here. So in my own therapy that I was doing, of working on that radical acceptance of kind of fully accepting that this is me, this is what I need. And that kind of acceptance is those new thoughts and processes that kind of dampen down those other parts. And it's great that people can say do the school run and love it. And I think the fact that we're balancing those needs, I don't do the nursery drop off because it starts my day hectic, stimulated, and I am in a position at the minute that my fiance can do that. If it doesn't, we might have to change and I'll put some decompression time in around, but it's balancing that, whatever it is, whether it's at work, at home, in relationships, of kind of, this is where we're at now. What can we do? What can you take? What's your strength? How can you feed off that? Because all of that is going to help us burning out. And that's one thing that in every part of my work and thinking and in my own stuff of, I want to work with my brain. The more we work with our brains, the less tired they are going to be, the more likely we are going to prevent burnout, instead of we still do, we live in a world that is built majority for neurotypical brains that doesn't work with it, whether it's the employed life or whatever it is, sticking to routines or sticking to regimes and things like that. But let's work around it. What does my brain need? And let's go with it, rather than trying to push and push and push to work against our brain, because we're setting ourselves up for failure because our brains don't work that way. And I think that that's a journey in itself of understanding that and fully accepting that as well. Of for however long, of my parents did, everyone, lots of my friends worked 9 to 5, and I didn't even question it. And then I came self-employed. I was like, oh, yeah. And even there's hiccups within that. It's not plain sailing, it's still work, but there's that ability to do that. And luckily I had the ability to do that. But I think we don't need to push all the time, because pushing's tiring.
Yeah. And it's that pervasive drive for autonomy, isn't it? It's that, like, I need to be autonomous. Yeah. I mean, and again, I think, as parents, I think this idea that we can actually change the narrative, right? So we can model the behavior that we want to pass down. So children watch and they learn. So if we are staying in relationships that are unhealthy, if we are constantly pushing ourselves beyond our limits, if we are dysregulated by going beyond our limits, they observe that and they think that's how life should be. And often, when someone's diagnosed, they find that actually the chain goes up. Like, parents are neurodivergent, grandparents were probably and there's a whole line of neurodivergence that's never been kind of identified. And it's not just the kind of inherited traits, it's also the behaviors that people kind of use to just survive life. But when you know about them, you're like, I don't need to do those anymore. I can change that, and I can model something different for the next generation down who, don't need to live the same life I did, and changing that up a bit.
It's so true. I would say, and it's not mathematical or statistically accurate, 90% of the parents that come through for the children, when we're doing the parent side, 90% they're either already on that path of thought of, I'm neurodivergent, or they're like, I do that, or kind of by the end they're like, oh my goodness. And we've identified several different people in that family because it is. And I think society generally has that idea, and I think that we are becoming more accepting of that we don't, but there still is work to do. And I think that when we think of burnout prevention, yes, we're doing it for ourselves because it's a horrific place to be in burnout, but we're doing it, if we have children, we're doing it for our children so that they don't have to get to that point. They can grow up knowing that they can do stuff with their brain. Yes, we're all gonna have to do stuff we don't like, but how can we work around so that we're not battling and hitting that brick wall all the time? And even not just for children, for your friends and family around you, because everything you pick up on other people's emotions and environment and everything like that, it feeds into everything. So if we're doing it, then we're modeling it to other people as well, of knowing it's okay to be kind to yourself and listen to your brain. And I think that's the infectious side of it as well, of kind of, and we say that to other people, of don't overwork yourself, don't do that, but you know that you'd probably still go into work when you're feeling poorly when you shouldn't. And I think people say about kind of other circumstances, but treat yourself like you would treat the person that you love the most and the advice that you'd give them. And I think sometimes we have to take a step back in the busy, chaotic world we live in to think, if that was my friend, what would I have said to them? I'd have said, take the day off work, lie in bed and do nothing, because you need that today. And I think, yeah, so I think we're doing it for us, but we're doing it for everyone else around that we love, but and also people that we don't know. If you might just have a conversation with someone and be like, oh, okay, yeah, and they'll take that and they'll do it and they'll pass it on to the people that are around them. And I think that that's huge. And I think if lots of people are doing all these tiny things and modeling that to other people, then hopefully we will see that shift in the next generation, the generation after, that we are kinder to ourselves and we are not at breaking point all the time and burnout. And we don't have to think about burnout prevention because that is just everyday life.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point where we want to get to. It's not even a thought. We just do these things because they are good for our brain and they are good for us.
Yeah, normalizing it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I think, as we said in the beginning, there will be some pushing, there will be a little bit of forcing. I mean, that doesn't matter what neurotype you are. Life sometimes does require that, but it's putting ourselves in the best possible place, either prior to it or thereafter, to just reset being my word. Just to stop it being accumulative and knocking on and just stacking up, kind of filling up your bowl or whatever analogy you're using, and it tips over. And it's just, how can you just pour a little bit of water out, create a bit more space in there? And I think a lot of that is self-compassion, self-acceptance, and radical acceptance too, is knowing what we realistically can do and actually starting to let go. I think if we can let go of certain things that we kind of enjoy doing, it's not the end of the world, but you kind of love it, but at the same time, there's other things you need to be. It's tricky because you're trying to. A big part of ND is just this unwielding, in a great way, passion for all these different things that we want to do, but it's setting ourselves up for the best possible situation that we can walk into, which is lovely. I could talk to you guys all day about this, but I'm going to wrap us up here. But I think I love the way that flow. We're not focusing too much on, oh God, burnout, what should I do now? It's much more about this holistic approach to life and knowing who you are, and knowing you're worthy too. You're worthy of doing these important healing things that you need to do on a daily basis. You're doing it because you have love. It's come from a place of love, not survival. And hey, parasympathetic nervous system, that's going to get you through life pretty well if you can tap into it as much as possible and not run off stress hormone, which is a big part of my life, especially with sleep deprivation. We'll talk about that on some other show. Sleep deprivation for ADHD, horrendous. But I've been doing it for 5 years, so maybe we'll talk about that. How I'm doing it could be quite powerful for people. I know how I'm doing it, to be honest. Yeah, that'll be fun. But yeah, I love this. It's fantastic. And like I said to you guys and for everybody at home, our next episode is all a Q&A. So that's where we get to answer the questions from all our lovely listeners, and dive into their topics. But I like this. We pick something that, that we're passionate about. We can just dive straight on in. But before we go, guys, Alice, just tell us more about where we can find you, kind of work that you're doing, just because people are going to get to know you over time anyway. But yeah, let's kick off that sentiment with what you do.
Of course. So on social medias, it's at Bold Minds ND. LinkedIn, we do have a Bold Minds ND page, but also my own personal one under Alice Cantwell. And we've got our website, which is www.boldmindsnd.com. There's everything there, and kind of I like to stay on. I'm trying to keep up with my consistency, but also replying to people, because I know that sometimes that is key. And I offer free clarity phone calls of like 10 to 15 minutes of just kind of, where shall I go? And it's not always for me to get you in, generally what's going to be good for you. And if it's a resource here or a website there, or just one little tip that someone can go away with, that's what I love to do as well. So social medias, website. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll pop it on the show notes. Head over to our website, guys, where you can see all of our partners, including all of our co-hosts and their work, and some other amazing companies and supplements and products and things like that, things that can help neurodivergent people. Head over to the website and you can get all the links there. Or in the show notes, you'll see a link for everything. So to become a coach, here's the link. To have an assessment, here's the link. So go and check all of that out. So Philippa, where can we find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram. I am flourish_with_Philippa. And I've got a website as well, which is flourish-counselling.co.uk. Yeah, those are the two main places you'll find me.
Amazing stuff. Also in the links below, pull me, I'm still as admin, you'll have links to these guys' episodes they did with me previously, so you can find out about their stories in more depth and stuff. They're amazing episodes. So go and listen to those because then you can get some context as well. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for listening at home. Stick around for the outro. You find a lot more about the other work that we're doing and how you can support us and how we can support you. So stick around for that. I was thinking of reading it on each episode, but I'm now looking at the full paragraphs there and going, no, I'm going to honor my needs here today, and I'll record it and use it over and over again. So stick around for that. And we'll see you next time where we're going to be answering your questions. We see you there. Hey everyone, thank you for listening to the show. And what is Ending Free all about? Well, as you know, we're here to spread the message that we can be free of the shame that may come up for us as being a neurodivergent person. We can be free of the burden of trying to fit in to society's expectations, and also free the burnout caused by not honouring our own needs. There's ways that you can help yourself with this, and also ways you can support us in the journey. So most importantly, if you can spread the word about the show, share our trailers around so other NDers can find the show, listen to these wellbeing shows with me and my panels, and hopefully they might get something out of it. And those same people can also ask us questions. You can ask us questions that we'll cover in our Q&A shows, and also if you sign up on Patreon to one of our priced tiers, then one of your questions will be boosted into our topic episode, where we'll spend a good half an hour at least on your question. But you can sign up for free over there as well, and that way you can ask questions for our Q&A show, which will be shorter responses. So either way, it's a great place to support us over there and get your questions answered by team. So yeah, go and check it out. For everything else, check the link in the show description for our link tree, and on there you can see all the partners we're partnered with. So that's ways where you can become an ADHD coach. There's things on there where you can go for assessment with Alice. There's ways of finding out more about magnet fidget toys through Chill Zones that we partnered with, gummies that can help you with your brain and nervous system. So we've teamed up with lots of partners, so go and check it out. We love all of them. We love the support that they give. So yeah, follow that link and you can explore all these things that can help you. So I want to thank you so much for supporting the show. And if you really wanted to push the mission even more, you can head over to our merch store on Shopify, grab a hoodie, a tote bag, a t-shirt with Ending Free on it, and sort of spread the message across the ND community. And all that money can help us put on more shows and grow the brand. That's what it's all about. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you in our next episode.